Hello everyone, welcome to Digital Energy, where we talk about Bitcoin, other digital assets, and the incredible crypto revolution that's sweeping the globe. Today I would like to talk to you about Bitcoin and how it can be a safe haven in times of war and other uncertainties.
Soundstripe. Soundstripe.
Of course, as we sit here today as world citizens on this Sunday, February 27th of 2022, the world news that's dominating all of the networks and the internet is the invasion of Russia into the country of Ukraine. At this somber time, with people around the world who love freedom, I want to condemn the actions of Vladimir Putin and his government in invading Ukraine and send our thoughts out to the people of Ukraine who are defending their homes and their families, their wealth, and their way of life. I also want to remind everyone that there are people in Russia, the citizens of Russia, who are standing up against their government and this act of aggression. And they're doing so at great risk to themselves, to their families, to their own wealth and liberty. And again, send our solidarity out to them, to all people who condemn war. So today, as I mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin and how Bitcoin can be a safe haven and provide protection for you and your family in times of uncertainty, whether it be times of war, whether it be environmental disasters, economic downturns, etc. And one of the things that we often see in times of uncertainty like this is a rush on banks. In the traditional financial system, where we hold our fiat currencies, our physical currencies or money in banks, when things get sketchy and you might need to flee or you might need supplies in an emergency, people run to their banks. And as we've talked about in other videos, in the traditional system, banks do not keep on hand deposits, physical deposits for every one of their depositors. They lend that money out. So at any one time, a bank might only have about 30% in physical currency to give out to its customers. If something happens and a whole bunch of customers flood in to pull out their money, that can actually destabilize the bank, cause the bank to fail, and have catastrophic effects. Here you can see this on this little article that you can go and read. Many of the Ukrainians who haven't already fled the country as Russia's threat turned into invasion stood in long lines outside of banks and ATMs, hoping to take out their funds. Also, Russian people were queuing outside ATMs trying to get US dollars. And that's an interesting commentary. I actually think that this Ukrainian war is, at least in part, an attempt of the Russian government to amass more power and wealth, of course, but also an attempt to free itself or get out of using the U.S. currency as the world reserve currency. And frankly, the fact that the U.S. currency has become the world reserve currency has often led to conflicts, military and otherwise. So how can Bitcoin help resolve this issue? Well, if you're new to Bitcoin, the number one thing you have to understand is that Bitcoin is not a physical thing. It's not a physical coin that you can put in your pocket. It's not currency. It's not anything like a precious gem that holds value, or gold or silver. Bitcoin is a digital currency. It resides in a ledger or a database on the internet that is designed in such a way that that database cannot be hacked. Bitcoin is essentially a ledger that keeps track of who owns what Bitcoin, who sends what Bitcoin to whom, and therefore it exists essentially in the ether, in the metaspace. It's not something that anyone can physically take away from you or that you need to physically transport from one area to the next. In that way, you can see how it would benefit someone in times such as these. If you are a Ukrainian citizen and you're wanting to flee with your family to an area of safety, or if you're trying to get precious and needed supplies during a time of war or uncertainty, if you have Bitcoin and can use that as your store of value, as your money to exchange for these goods, you don't have to go to a bank. You don't have to run down to any financial institution in order to get access to that store of value. Also, no government can ever limit the amount that you have. If you're holding your Bitcoin in the proper way so that you have control of it using your own private keys, you have access to it at all times. And the other important characteristic of Bitcoin is that it's designed to be a peer-to-peer network. What does that mean? It means that if you want to send Bitcoin to anyone in exchange for a good or service, you can do it from your cell phone or computer directly to that person without any intermediary. No bank has to be involved, no government has to be involved, no middleman who might be charging you a large fee for doing that. You can send it peer-to-peer. Likewise, if you're a person and have run out of resources, people could send you those resources via Bitcoin directly to you without having to get any permission from anyone. So those characteristics of Bitcoin can really safeguard you in times of trouble. They safeguard not only you, but the entire economy, because there is never a risk of a run on a bank for physical fiat currency that could then cause banks to fail, that could then put a resulting shock throughout the entire economic community. Another thing to consider is that Russian citizens also can benefit from Bitcoin. As their government has decided to engage in war with its neighbor, we have seen that the ruble has plummeted in value. Obviously, that hurts the everyday Russian citizen. If you are a Russian citizen that has Bitcoin and you're unable to get access to your money in the local financial institution, or you're seeing the value of that money plummet because of a decision made by your government, Bitcoin could serve as a safety net for you by preserving value, allowing you to have access to those funds to get food, clothing, shelter, safety, without having to talk to anyone or get anyone's permission, and even in the face of a government ban or limitation on withdrawals of your currency. For a deeper dive into what Bitcoin is and what its beneficial characteristics are, please take a look at this video that we'll link in the description below that we did a while back that goes more in depth about the Bitcoin network, how it's secured, and why it's the safest and best form of money that's been developed in the last 5,000 years. If you like this content, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification so that you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. Now, on a more philosophical note, I do want to talk about Bitcoin as a deterrent to war. That may sound like a bit of hyperbole, but I truly believe, when you think about it deeply, that Bitcoin as a technology will promote peace and deter war. If you think about the causes of war throughout the history of humanity, it is always about a central government or nation trying to acquire greater wealth and power. And of course, it is because those central governments have the power of money in their own hands. There has never been a time in the history of the world where the power of money resides primarily in the hands of the individual. When power resides in the hand of the individual, then that power is decentralized, meaning that the government can't manipulate the value of money, the government can't take away your money, the government or a nation state can't gin up resentment between one group of people against another, or one nation against another because of economic conditions. This being the case, the more that we have power of money within our own hands as individuals, I think the incentive to war is less. Ask yourself this: if you had the ability to make the decision for yourself, would you ever engage in war? I think a rational person never would, because they would know that the risks are too great, the consequences too great, and therefore everyone would decide, let's have peace. Essentially, what Bitcoin represents to me, at least in part, is the much needed and inevitable separation of the power of money from nation states and from central governments. And that is a dramatic shift in the history of the world. Never before has that ever existed. Until next time, this is Brett with Digital Energy saying stand for peace, adopt Bitcoin, and as always, protect yourself out there.